Welcome back to another episode of the Red Pill Cartel. Very special guest today. His name is Vito, and he's a contributor to a wonderful book called Pillars of Wisdom. Vito, everybody, welcome Vito. And Vito, tell us a little bit about yourself, your past, and then kind of work up to how it is you found kind of your spiritual path.
All right, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you.
Yes, so my past, it's pretty simple. So I used to live in Germany as an immigrant child, right? So both my parents are Italian, and in the 90s, they migrated to Germany to look for jobs. So that's kind of like my background there. I worked several different jobs before COVID hit. So when COVID hit, I was basically that's when I found my spiritual calling
Hmm.
in the middle of the pandemic and everything.
I think a lot of people did at the time.
Yeah, and I created sort of like my own church community where we went out on the streets and we were preaching and we're handing out letters and
Was it for
pamphlets.
like Christianity or
It
like
was for
just in
Christian.
general? Okay, okay.
It was for Christianity. That's how it started because that's as an Italian, like Catholicism was like the closest thing to me
Sure. Being
in terms
Italian,
of
I imagine.
right. So in terms of religion, that was the closest thing. Like right now, I don't even consider myself Christian.
Neither do I.
as 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 I read more books, I realized a lot of more stuff. Uh,
Christianity is just a part of the puzzle.
it's a lot. There's a lot more to it,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you know we could really deep dive into that. But yeah, so that's how my spiritual journey started. And in the pandemic, I realized that you know I knew that the system was broken before the pandemic, but when the pandemic hit, it really shocked me, like by how much. Not just the system itself, but the people who are part of the system, right? So
Hmm.
I didn't know that if the government was going to take over your family, your friends, your relatives, they would all be on their side.
Right.
You know? And so
And
that was
that's really what COVID showed us. It was like the response. Even my father got attacked for commenting something about, where you were the Freedom Rally, the trucker rally in Canada.
yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So when that happened, my dad was like, "Go truckers!" Right? And my
Right.
my some of my nieces or whatever, they attacked him saying, "Oh, you support the Nazis and shit." And my dad's like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Because one or two guys in Ottawa at the rally had like a fucking Confederation flag, and one of them had a Nazi flag. Two people out of like thousands, and the
Yeah,
whole
that's
entire convoy are Nazis, right?
and those two people were probably like federal agents. They were like
Oh,
implants. Like
absolutely, yeah. Agent
fucking
provocateurs, yeah.
yeah. They were totally there to stir up
Stir up
violence.
shit. Yeah.
Exactly. Um, but yeah, so like friends, families, relatives, people that you think you normally trust, they just completely against you,
Hmm.
and so you point out towards how like okay, like a lot of things doesn't make sense here, those vaccines, they don't make sense. Why do you need, like, the narrative doesn't make any sense,
Right.
and those pandemics, they clearly don't work because you just got sick like last week. So if
Yeah, yeah.
if the pandemic really worked, then why are you getting sick? Why are people still getting sick, right? And they have these justifications. And so that was the moment I realized, is I need to just get out, you know
Yeah.
and I was looking for a way out, mostly online, I joined various communities, and one of them was the author of this book, right? He was the major author the best author on the Red Pill, right? And the best writer on the Red Pill. And he pointed towards a lot of like structural flaws in various systems, right? And one article that he wrote was "Break Up with Your Country," where a lot of this stuff that he wrote like made sense to me, right? I really related to it a lot. So I gave him a call because he left his contact there. I gave him a call and I asked him like, yeah, so this is my life. Um, this is my life right now. I don't know what to do, right? Just
Right.
I guess just teach me a few things, and if you can help me, help me, and if you can't, can. And so he supported me a lot throughout my way to a point where I trusted him so much that I moved to Mexico to help him finish up his book, which is here.
Nice.
And so a lot of the stuff in the book that's like very spiritual stuff, like here, as you can see, it's like it has its own tarot deck, basically.
Okay.
And there's certain astrological contributions that make sense for the specific article, right? Like here you have Mercury and Virgo, stuff like that. And that's sort of like what I helped out with, because I was pretty knowledgeable in astrology and alchemy,
Tarot.
tarot a little bit. Still learning it, mostly alchemy and astrology, but I guess at some point, you kind of hit it becomes pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, you kind of hit it like a standstill with all of this stuff, I think.
Right.
Like even though like you're diving deep into any kind of particular subject into spirituality, it's kind of just like you kind of look at it, you dive deep into it, and then you like come back up for air, and then you're like, okay, I have more knowledge now, but I need to stay away from that for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
because
become
you
like
can
a
go
full.
way down. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I really went deep. Like at the end of the day, like all that spirituality, it's pretty much Babylonian magic anyway. Like
It's all about consciousness expansion. That's I believe what
it
it all is.
sure. It goes back to it really goes back to like ancient Babylonian rituals and magic where a lot of the stories that, for example, the stories in the Bible, for example, the stories in Genesis, right? There's a story that happens pre-Genesis,
Right.
and then that's the more interesting part because you have like this battle of gods, and there's one god who's victorious, and then he starts ruling the universe because he
All of a
defeated
sudden,
all.
he's the one that breathed life into the universe and
Right,
created
right, right. And
everything.
then
Yeah.
you're like, okay, uh, controls the universe, and then in him controlling the universe, he creates like everything into his image, stuff like that. So you'll see like there's Genesis itself, but then the story before Genesis, which is more interesting, and you realize that a lot of a lot of
Not as fucking dull as Genesis.
that well, Genesis is kind of boring because all this stuff already happened, you know
Yeah.
pretty much. Like after, I'd say, like after Noah's Ark, like all the major stuff happened already, you know and the story in Genesis just becomes like a weird reflection of that pre-Genesis era, you
Hmm.
know
There's a whole lot of truth in the Bible. I love to say this all the time. There's a whole lot of truth in the Bible, and you can take so many different stories and parables and apply it to daily life and everything. But is it really God's word? You know?
it's heavily I believe it is, but it's heavily
Okay.
coded, it's heavily coded, and a lot of it is just misinterpreted and
Right.
also gate kept.
Hmm. Hmm. Like when
And
you were talking earlier about having division in your family, that in the Bible, essentially that happens, like separating the
right,
wheat from the chaff, and brother will kill brother, all this kind of shit,
right, right.
so like depending on how high we get to a point in this society and timeline in particular, there is going to be great division.
Right.
So that's a thing, and that's in the Bible. So
Right. And the thing is again, like a lot of the stuff in the Bible is coded because it was written in ancient Hebrew, or actually it was written in Aramaic. And
at least the New Testament was, right?
right. The Old Testament was also written in ancient Hebrew.
Yeah,
And
okay. Yeah,
the
of
thing,
course. Yeah.
right. And the thing about Hebrew as a language is that there's always like multiple meanings of things. And there's also the alphabet is also a number system. So what you'll
Mhm.
see is you have like all these words that don't make sense, and these stories, they don't really add up to something until you start looking like, okay, like there's a whole code system here, there's a whole number system here, and you start adding up those numbers. They start changing meanings. You get new numbers, but those numbers are also words that mean different things. Like for example, there's the word Baal, right? But
Mhm.
Baal is also a word for king, and in ancient Hebrew, when you do the word like king of the universe, you use the word Baal, right? So it's like an open question. So that people like did was there a religion before Jews
Right,
that
right.
worship the same God, but they sacrificed humans to him?
Yeah, yeah.
And the answer is there were definitely many cults at the time that worshipped that same God, that then later turned into a religion because you had in a priest class that put everything together, you know. And that's how it was, at least for the Jews, where Moses had these Egyptian priests, and they had their myths and they had their stories, and it just all was put together to make sense, right?
Right.
But then again, like there's like heavily censorship. It's like heavily coded, um, because you can't know the whole truth. Because if you know the whole truth, like there's danger that you become a heretic, or that
Hmm.
you lose your mind, you know. Um, and so um, that's why reading the Bible in and of itself, what a lot of Christians don't understand, what a lot of people don't understand actually, is that it's heavily coded, and there is a deeper level to everything, and they
Sure.
don't
And
look at it.
even like some people take the Bible literally. Some people look at it as an astrotheological standpoint.
But the main point is that they don't dig deep. Instead, they just kind of, and that was the problem why, that was the whole reason why I dissolved my Christian community, is they refuse to read, and they refuse
Hmm.
to look deeper into things. And that's the whole reason why COVID worked so well. It's because
Hmm.
people had this, it's like a drive to not know. Like they really be invested to make themselves not know, you
Right.
know. And you'll see this pattern not just in the spiritual space, but you'll see it in the economic space, and the philosophical space, and the psychoanalytical space, where people just look at something surface level and they leave it at that, you know.
Well, I think the problem with that is the whole fact that we have uh, upper tiers of hierarchies that are dictating what we should be thinking. And for the most part, I think that's what a lot of people do is they just flock to that way of thinking instead of digging and looking into anything and kind of uh, being brave to speak out against what the narrative is, right? And it goes with saying with anything, with spirituality, religion, any kind of thing where it has these priests or this governor or the senator or a president. If you speak out against that and you're trying to think for yourself, then you're labeled as something like a heretic, like you said,
Right,
right?
right. Because this is what the book talks about actually. Um, is that if you show any sense of originality, of any original thought or any
Hmm.
individuality, that
God forbid.
it has to be repressed because
Right,
you're not following the cultural norm.
right.
You're not trying to be normal, right? What you'll see, for example, in those uh, what you see in those suburban families, for example, where it's like the most obvious is you show up for Thanksgiving, you show up for Christmas, and you show up like with, let's say, with your anti-vaccine stances, right?
Hmm.
Um,
I've heard many horror stories about this.
right. And now you are like the black sheep of the family. You're the outsider. You're the one that's you showing any individual thought, any originality, and we have to shut you down because you're disturbing the peace. You're disturbing the way the things should go right now, right? And that's because it's a fetishization of culture.
Right.
It's a fetishization of culture where you think that there is a normal, right? Like there is a normal, but there is no normal. Normal is just whatever the current narrative tells you what normal
Uh-huh.
is, you know?
Even in culture, like where I grew up in Canada, Ontario, Toronto area, when I was in high school, people would start to dress differently, and people would say to me, "Look at this guy, that's not normal." And I'm like, "Well, what the fuck is normal?" You know what I mean?
Right.
And I was always one to question everything. Like why do you have to look at somebody and judge them because they're wearing something different? You know what I mean?
Right. But that's, it's again like commodities are fetishized. And so when you're wearing a specific outfit, you're representing yourself, right? So people who follow trends and people who follow whatever popular is, they're looking to be the most unoriginal persona, right? So it's like putting on a mask,
Unoriginal but accepted.
right?
Right?
Because you are accepted by the ethos, right? You're accepted by the ethnos, which is to say by your people, and it's very tribalistic actually. Um, and so they put on those masks, figuratively, non-figuratively, to sort of like fit in and fulfill their role in whatever society they're in, you know.
Sure, for sure.
But again, the problem is that
Serial killers do it all the time.
so yeah, but they do it, and they do it because they don't really have that much self-awareness,
Right.
um and so for them, like the mask is all they have. But that goes also for people who are not serial killers, people
Yeah.
who are just your average Joe. They
I
can't.
I yeah, for sure, dude. I watched this movie 2 nights ago. It's called Woman of the Hour.
Yeah.
Um and I just looked at the like the blurb about it. I was like, oh, this looks interesting, right? And then I didn't even realize until the end of the fucking movie that it actually happened. Like it was based on a true story. I was like, oh
Right.
shit. So this guy, he was a photographer and he'd pick up
Mm-hmm.
women, bring them out into like
Mm-hmm.
a desert area or a rural area, photograph them, and kill them. And then he would even toy with them. Like he would strangle this one girl and then he would resuscitate her through mouth to mouth and kill her again. And like that's what he was doing. He was toying with his victims. And then while he was on his murder spree, he was on a fucking dating game show. And the
Mm-hmm.
girl who was the bachelorette,
Mm-hmm.
she picked the serial killer
Mm-hmm.
as the date. She didn't get killed though. Thankfully, she was creeped out enough by him that she evaded his tactics, right? But this guy I think he had a life sentence, multiple life sentences for 8 murders, but it's supposedly he had like 130 murders that were unaccounted for.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable that he would have the balls to go on a fucking TV show to pick up one of his victims.
Yeah. So
That's crazy.
that's yeah, if you're insane, if you're insane, you have a rich creative structure because you're creating a whole narrative to justify whatever you're doing,
Right.
right? And so that allows them to be able to put on these different masks and
Nobody's
and
gonna figure this one out. I'm going
right,
on a dating game, you know? Yeah.
right. Again, like that hubris, that's part of their flaws,
Which is what the elites do as well.
I mean, yeah.
Evil hides in plain sight, right? And they run the world and they're psychopaths and they have this mask on like I'm the president or I'm the governor, or, you know what I mean?
Right. So
Because
the difference.
we were talking before we started recording about how managers, even like at a grocery store, are like sociopaths because they have these little employees that they're
Right.
trying to rule over and they're assholes. It's like, why do you got to be an asshole? Oh, I get it,
Right.
because you're a fucking sociopath.
Right. And so um, you know, we'll talk about the manager part a little bit more because there's actually an article. There's actually an article in the book about managers, which I
Sorry,
co
I'm rambling a lot. I'm cutting you off. I'm
which
sorry.
it's okay, which I co-wrote. I co-wrote that article, which is why I'm so passionate about it because I was on the receiving end of managers. But
Yeah.
go back to your elitist argument, right? Like the elite for them, it's what's the difference? Okay, what's the difference between a psychopath and somebody who is just ontologically evil? Is that in the psychopath, it's a psychological issue that's there.
Right.
He doesn't know, like he only has his persona. Okay, like there's you as an individual, right? There's you with your own ego, with your own self-reflection, and that plays into your unconscious, and so on and so forth. And it kind of just pendles back and forth, right? So there's
Right.
your conscious, and they play into each other. But if you're a psychopath, you don't have an unconscious. That doesn't exist. And so because you don't have any inhibitions, that's because nobody ever has told you no,
Mm.
and
Does that dive in? Does that relate to what we've been discovering lately? Is that a certain part of the population doesn't have an internal dialogue or monologue?
an internal dialogue is something that happens. Yes, kind of, right? So an internal dialogue is still conscious, but it's still conscious, but it comes from the unconscious, right?
Right.
So there's
Right.
certain thoughts that you circulate, right? And then there's certain images that transform into language, and these language then transform into thoughts. And then that's how you have your internal dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some people don't have an unconscious. And because they don't have an unconscious, everything just kind of like blurts out,
Right. 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 Right.
and
Like for
with
me, like I had a friend, he's one of my best friends, and today he admitted to me, he's like, because he showed me a video, he sent me a video about what I just asked you about, like how certain people don't have an inner dialogue. And then he gave me a little blurb. He said, I really don't have an internal dialogue. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? I said, I don't even know what that's like because my thoughts are constantly bombarded by my own voice.
right,
You know what I mean? And he's like,
right.
yeah, I don't have that. I'm like, that's crazy.
Now it's not a question if he suffers from psychosis, which is the official term, or I'm just using official terms here. If he suffers from psychosis, or if he just represses his internal monologue,
That's a
that
possibility too.
you
Yeah.
know. But so for psychopaths, for them, they have only their persona, because if they take off the mask, then there's nothing there, and they always admit that there's nothing there, that they don't exist. right?
Right.
If you put on a mask for your job, but you take it off, then you're like, okay, but in the moment of you taking it off, there's still something there. There's
Right.
still you, how you sort of like know yourself with like all your
This is
inhibitions,
very
conscious.
Jungian discussion, right?
I'd actually say it's Freudian.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
We're going way back. It's very Freudian actually. And I'm going off of Freud and Lacan, who implemented Freudian psychoanalysis with linguistics, right?
Okay. Yeah.
But okay, so there's your unconscious, and in your unconscious, like your unconscious gives you sort of like an identity, you know?
Keep talking. I'll be right back. I can still hear you.
All right, okay. So your unconscious gives you an identity, but when you are a psychopath, you don't have that. So you take off that mask, there's nothing there. But if you are you and you take off that mask, you're like, okay, there's still me for whatever I think of myself, you know? And that's the key difference. So that is uncomfortable for a lot of normies, because when they were for the sake of being normal and for the sake of fitting in and being accepted by their family, they never removed their masks, or when they did, they hid it. They didn't allow it. They repressed it, because that would mean conflict, and that would mean that you don't fit in. You show like individuality, and that's just bad, you know.
Right.
And
The
and
mask
so
thing is a very complicated thing, man, because even myself, like when I'm around certain people, I feel like I am being myself, but at the same time, I feel like I could be a huge shut in when I want to be. You know what I mean?
right,
When I'm not doing a podcast, I'm just shut myself in, you know?
because that's because you've been raised in a way, and that's, I speak for everyone. You've been raised in a way to follow societal norms, right?
Right.
And to follow societal norms, you have to you're hit with limits on what you can and what you can't do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And so because you don't want to, but those limits are unclear because your dad or whoever like introduced you to society didn't really do a good enough job to like fully introduce you, because they're human beings themselves,
Sure.
what we don't understand is we expect a lot from our parents, but our parents, for them it's like a first time thing as well, you know.
Yeah.
Like I have a kid, and I'm like, what do I do with this little shit, you know? Like
Yeah.
he's here, I'm a mother or a father now, like what, you know?
You just I guess you just kind of, if you're a parent, which I'm not, I guess you got to kind of hope, if you do have a child, that you could do the best that you can to raise them socially normally, I guess. But like you have to, there's another thing about it. Maybe you have to like hope that they will go on their own hero's journey, right?
The point is, that's at the end of the day, like that's where you want to push them towards, but the problem is that when you do that, they always grow resentful towards you. They have to, and
That's another thing. Yeah.
we've all had our moments where we blamed our parents for certain shortcomings that we have in our lives, because we were like, oh, if only they did that better, right?
Yeah, I did that one time. I called out my parents for not pushing me harder.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I called up my mom for pushing me too
But
hard.
then again, if they, yeah, that's the thing. If you got pushed too hard, you'd resent them too, right?
Right.
It's like a no fucking win situation with
It's
parenting.
exactly. But my point is that you resenting your parents means that they did a successful job, right? Because they now you fully separated yourself from them, and you now function as your own adult,
Right, right, right.
part of who's part of society, you know and so you resenting them means that they've done their job good, because there's something called the Oedipus complex, right? And
Mm,
so and so if your father figure separated you from your mother, because your desire as a child is to be connected with the mother all the time,
sure.
you
Suck on the
know,
teat.
and exactly, and and suck on the tit, you can it's also your object of desire, you know
Right,
you can treat it like that. And your father separating you from that is good, because now you have to look for a different object of desire that resembles the tit,
right.
you know? And
That's
that's
a
what
great
makes
analogy.
that's you know he's basically
We
telling you,
all
listen.
like all men want fucking titties, right?
Yeah,
So
well, he's basically telling you, listen, son, this is my tit, go look for your own, you know
yeah, 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 for sure.
um
Don't be the adult who still wants to
yeah,
suck on your mom's tit.
exactly. don't
Yeah,
don't be that guy. There's a lot of
great
people like
lesson.
that, and psychopaths are like that, actually. So when do
Like
their
Homelander from The Boys. Have you seen that?
right, like
Yeah,
sociopaths, psychopaths, they are like that because they they've never been met with those social inhibitions, and they think they can do whatever they want, you know and so if you have like a Homelander, he has all these powers. He's basically Superman. Why should he not kill thousands of people because he feels like it?
right.
Um, but
Like in the scene where he fantasizes when he's doing the speech, where he
right, yeah,
fantasizes about lasering everybody with his eyes.
right,
Right?
right.
Why not?
And
I could do it.
but he doesn't because he's looking for that motherly approval from them.
Yeah,
Because you have to understand, like, you're gonna be separated from your mother at some point, you know but if you've never been like taught that, okay, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do, and this is how you basically go find your own object of desire without breaking societal norms. If you never taught that, and then you're suddenly separated from the tit, and now you're looking desperately everywhere else, you know
absolutely. Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's why he's never openly doing his sociopathic stuff, and he's trying
Right.
to appeal to people so much. And
Yeah.
but again, like, they exist not for themselves, but they exist to basically, they exist for the mother, right? And that becomes their whole life's purpose. Now, with elitists, it's a bit different, because elitists, they
I was
are
just gonna ask you, how did we get on this tangent about tits?
so it is sometimes. Um, with elitists, it's different, because they are, unlike psychopaths and sociopaths, they are self-aware. They know what they're doing,
Oh,
and
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
and and they fully believe in it too. And for
And they
them,
believe that
it's,
everything is for the greater good.
well, they don't care about the greater good. What they care about is profit.
Okay.
How much profit can I make to comic book evil sit on a pile of money, like your evil capitalist sitting on a pile of money, smoking his cigar, laughing at poor
Right.
people.
The typical fat cat, right?
Right.
But
That's
I
who
would
they
I
are.
would beg to differ though, because some of them do believe in that they're what they're doing is for a higher purpose. Even though they're killing people
I
outright, slowly
they're
but surely, they believe that they're doing God's work, but it's which God are they worshiping, right?
right. That's what I was gonna get into. It's you know, when they say for the greater good, they obviously we're going to deduct language here now. It's when they're talking about the greater good, they're talking about the greater good to them, right? So for them, and they have to dress it up in a way, because the way sacrifices work and the rituals work is they they can't force you to do a ritual. You have to consent to it, you know. And
Which is like what COVID was. It was a mass fucking ritual.
right, and nine
And the
11,
facts are out there for you to seek.
right,
But if you're not seeking them out, then you're just complying with them and their
you're
bullshit.
complying, exactly, because ignorance doesn't save you
Right.
from the law, right? So um COVID was a massive ritual, 9/11 was a massive ritual, and the Iraq war, the Afghan war, they were all rituals, and they were all mass sacrifices, basically, because you know in order for you to be where they are, you can't be an atheist. You got to have
Right.
some belief system. You got to believe
Right.
in something, and they choose a belief system that fits with their motives the most, a belief system that allows them to take as much as possible, because if it's as above so below, which means to say that you could be like the sun, giving life and resources and nurture the people around you, but you could also be like the black sun, which is very taking, which is very, you take, you keep for yourself, you're greedy. So it's a reflection of, it's like the
Which is
opposite
what I
of.
feel like most of society behaves like today.
That's because they're ideologically interpolated into it, you know.
Right.
So what elitists do is they convince you that if you behave on your own self-interest, you can help the most people, you know. But
So you
like,
got these billionaires who are like philanthropists and shit. And they're kind
right.
of trying to balance out their karma for the bullshit that they do by giving to other in other areas of
Yeah,
life,
but
right?
that giving just, it turns out that it's all a scam anyway, because it
Yeah, it
just goes back,
perpetuates the same shit. Yeah.
it goes back into their accounts at the end of the day.
Hmm.
And a lot of times they're giving, for example, there was I don't know which year it was, I forgot, but there was a massive tsunami in the Philippines. And what a bunch of these philanthropists did was they bought the land that was destroyed by the tsunami and they built resorts on it. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
And, BlackRock admitted a couple of years ago that the whole Ukraine war happens because they're trying to invest into rebuilding Ukraine,
Right.
which means they're just trying to, I don't know if they want to build
Destroy it.
more.
For
I don't
now.
know if they want to build more resorts on Ukraine. I don't know what's in Ukraine for you to build a resort on.
Right. Well,
But
it's the same thing that's going on with that happened with Maui and what's happening with LA right now.
right. So
They intentionally destroy it through either wildfires or direct energy weapons, and then they rebuild it how they want with like, like Judge Dredd style fucking 15-minute smart cities, right?
right. So the most profit that the way capitalism makes profit is they use natural disasters, war, and these and pandemics and epidemics to sort of like make their money, because
Right.
then they can sell themselves as these saviors, right?
Absolutely.
And as they do, they just push their own market onto you, right? So the LA fires, they happen because they want to buy those plots for cheaper. Like some of these plots, like I've heard from my Californian friends, um, they're like 100 millions, like
Sure.
hundreds of millions worth. But when
Sure.
they burn those down, they can get them for like 50K. So
Yeah.
people who live in those houses, they're basically trying to replace the middle class in LA, the upper
Yeah.
middle class in LA, and then just buy that land for 50,000 and just stall that process out so you eventually just give in.
It's so easy to calculate that's what's going on because even the insurance companies who, people have insurance for their houses and shit, they're pulling out right now.
They're pulling out. Let me.
They're like, oh, let's prove that insurance is a fucking scam
Right.
because that's what it is,
They've been
essentially, right?
they've pulled out for a long time, actually, a long time
Yeah.
ago, because there were a bunch of Armenians in LA who did fire insurance scams where they would
Okay.
set their own businesses on fire to
How much
collect
do
that
you think
money.
that was set up
It's an open
for the
question.
long term for where we are now, right?
It's an open question. It's an open question, but I've spoken to Armenians, and I know people who've spoken to Armenians. I'm going to be a little bit racist here, and Armenians, they do scams,
Mm-hmm.
because um because that's in their racial. There's like certain racial tendencies
Is
that
it in
people
their
have.
blood or is it because they were genocided and they want to get
Um,
revenge?
it's a it's if you're a society that's constantly occupied, you need to find different ways to overcome that occupation,
Sure.
and so you
Yeah.
start developing certain tactics, and it becomes part of your culture. That's
That's
why.
why I think like it's a legitimate question to ask. Like the Armenians were systematically genocided and now they have to resort to other tactics, right? So maybe them being in LA, you know,
Right. It's
System of a Down, all those guys are fucking Armenian. And Serge Tankian himself works on like uh, the uh, the Armenian genocide documentaries and the music and all that shit, shedding light on this, right? So, like, is it? It just makes me think like putting like connecting all the dots that maybe this was a part of the fires of LA, the insurance companies backing out, the insurance frauds from the Armenians. Boom, boom, boom,
right.
boom, 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 boom. We got all this fucking shit, like
Right.
5D chess, right?
Right. So it all adds up, right? It's not my question if how much of it was like planned and how much of
Right.
it was just
That's just me,
opportun-
my
op-
gears
opportun-
grinding. That's all.
opportunism. I'd
Yeah.
argue it wasn't opportunism because I know Armenians. They like I've talked to a few, and I know people who talk to a few Armenians, and they yeah. But that being said, so these so capitalism makes its profits from these natural disasters, from epidemics, from war, and and they quite literally capitalize on that, you know. And so that's basically the main message of this book is it explains all these structures, right?
Right.
Like these systematic structures, these cultural structures, these personal structures. And it tells you that okay, well, look how fucked up all of this is. And so really you only have like one solution and that solution is to say that
Jesus is our savior.
is to just get the fuck out, Jesus is not our savior. Not for this one.
Well,
uh,
let's go into that one a little bit
okay,
because that's one of
so
my favorite things to talk about because I have a lot of Christian friends and shit, and I used to be, kind of a Christian, but now I just try to separate myself from every kind of fucking label there is.
right.
Because people that have come onto my show, they tell me, "Oh, you're a Muslim and you don't even know it." I'm like, "No, I don't. I'm not any part of any fucking religion."
That's just Muslims trying to convince you that you're a Muslim. Don't
I
believe them.
guess so, but like my mind is so away from that shit that I'm not
Yeah,
gonna get pulled in. You know what I mean?
you can't
So
trust
that's why
Muslims
I
with their.
separate myself from every kind of label that there is. So, what are your thoughts on like
Okay,
Christ,
let me
Jesus,
let me let you in on
Christ
a secret.
consciousness, all this shit, dude? Because I
Let me
love this
let you
shit.
let me let you in on a secret. on a little
I
secret.
love secrets.
So there is, I'm gonna tell you two stories, and they're gonna connect.
Okay.
So Christ is, so there's this book called Books of Secrets, right? Which is like an ancient Egyptian Babylonian magic book. And it talks about different rituals that are being made, right?
Okay.
And and in these rituals, there is one particular ritual that it's about gaining popularity
Okay.
for a city, from a city, or from just gaining followers, basically. And the way that this ritual works is you have to basically take a lion's heart and dunk it into living water, right? Which is usually a river, or a sea, or the sea, you dunk it into living water and you say a certain prayer. And by saying a certain prayer, you summon those angels of an encampment, or really they're just demons. And and you say their names, you write them on like a silver lamella or gold lamella, say their names, and then they do their thing, right? Because the way it works is you have the macrocosm, the microcosm, and those angels and beings, they do a lot in the macrocosm. And that through these rituals, you translate that into the microcosm. Now, one of the names of these beings is an abbreviation, or it sounds very similar to Christos, which is
And
the
you're talking about a lion's heart, and
lion's
Christ
heart,
is known as the lion,
right? So
lion
it's
of Judah, right?
right. So it's an open question. Like it's an open question if they're talking about a literal lion, or either way. So there is one of the names of these angels in these encampments is similar to the word Christos, which is the Greek word for Christ, right? I'm not going to say the actual name because I don't want to have that in my life. I don't need that.
Yeah. He shall not be named. Yeah.
But
Let's just say Voldemort.
just a Voldemort. The problem is when you start speaking those names, and with their real pronunciation, you can actually like force them into your reality, and they really don't want that because they're very malicious and they hate human beings, and they're going to entice you to do like sinful things and separate you from God so that you
That's so comforting.
I know, right? I'm just saying like the most fucked up
No,
shit
I've heard it
casually,
many times where you shouldn't speak like demons' names or angels' names and
yeah,
all
you
that
didn't even
stuff.
speak
Yeah.
names of God, to be honest with you. Like
Yeah.
they always like to say the most famous one that we know, the Yod have Vav have,
Yod He Vav He, yeah.
yeah,
The
um
Tetragrammaton.
right, shouldn't even say that one, but people do anyway because they like to curse themselves. So okay, so one of the names is Christ in those rituals, and Christ is basically the being that then manifested itself into Jesus's body to sort of like strike a deal, right? And the ritual calls for you to disappear, to hide your face for 3 days. So literally hide your face, like you can't show your face to the public for 3 days. And like Jesus being crucified, then put in a
Muslim over there good
cave.
at that.
There, it's yeah.
Welcome to the Red Pill Cartel, where I incorporate spirituality and comedy.
With
Okay.
racism, yeah, it's fine. It's the same thing anyway. At some point you're gonna read spiritual texts and you're like, yeah, this low-key sounds kind of racist, but it's okay.
There's nothing wrong with being racist, honestly.
it was a different time.
It's another label.
But that being said, so it calls for you to disappear for 3 days for the ritual to be complete. And so what a common theory is that Jesus did that ritual to gain a lot of followers, but one of the drawbacks, he got tricked by this demon into dying. Right.
Okay.
And so, yes, he got a lot of followers, but he can't benefit from it because he's dead. You know.
So his Instagram account got nuked.
Pretty much. It's like you know, it's you become
just like
famous,
all of us.
You become famous on YouTube. You become famous on YouTube, but then YouTube like bans you. You know, so people talk about you, but you don't benefit from it. So that's the first part. So he then got possessed by this entity to basically do his stuff, right? And then disappeared, right? So
this is Jesus, or
yeah, this is Jesus. I'm talking about Jesus.
Yeshua.
So later, what happened out of that? A Jewish cult, got developed, right? Out of Christianity, and the Romans, they were like, well, people don't believe in our gods anymore, and we also don't really have any connection to our gods anymore because the I think it was called Julianus era of Rome. They completely separated, you know, like they were more connected to their Roman gods, and that's why Rome as an empire was so strong, because it had its spirituality. But then later down the line, people became like atheists and Stoics and like agnostics, and they stopped believing in their own gods, you know. And then it's like, okay, like what does it mean to be a Roman? Well, I don't fucking know, and I don't care. I'm just here to have fun at an orgy, you know. I'm just here to participate in orgies and own farms and just charge rent. I don't care. So
probably fuck kids.
Probably Greek fanboys. Shout out to my Greeks.
Thailand is a new fanboy fucking land.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy. So the Romans were like, well, we need a religion. We need a religion to sort of like keep forward, but we can't just invent a new religion. And because they were so close to the Jews at the time, they were like, you know, asking the Jews, hey, why can't we just have your religion? Right? As like a state religion. And the Jews were like, well, if you want our religion as the state religion, you got to rebuild the temple. The Romans like, no, I'm not going to rebuild your temple. Go fuck yourself. And the Jews, right. Okay, well then no Judaism for you. You can go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
And yeah, pretty standard interaction. And later they found this little Jewish cult, Christianity, and it was easier because they were like, okay, so I don't have to get circumcised. You're saying I don't have to get circumcised, and I just have to believe in this guy, and I'll be fine, right? Like, well, it's a bit more complicated than that. And so Rome was like, okay, if it's more complicated, we're going to do a Council of Nicaea and just simplify your religion and just seize it for ourselves. What are you going to do?
Right.
You know? And so that's what they did. So that's how the Catholic Church came to be. So Christianity then is like a very simplified version of that Jewish cult, which is also a simplified version of like an ancient Babylonian ritual that happened. And Christianity, so Catholicism comes alive and it starts spreading around, and was really created to basically conquer the north and conquer more of the Middle East, right?
Catholicism was.
Yeah. Catholicism.
Which is where the Crusades come in.
Right, because they really needed to, because they were struggling a lot to conquer the north and they were struggling a lot to conquer the Middle East. And they were like, well, we need a religion to sort of like conquer the world, you know, because that's easier than to just do it with the sword. So you
Right.
need a book and the sword to conquer the world.
That makes sense.
And
Yeah.
so what happens then afterwards is you have Martin Luther who like reads the book, who reads the Bible, and he's like, well, a lot of the stuff that you're saying doesn't really like fit in the like with scripture. And the Catholic Church is like, yeah, we know, but that's not the point where the religion exists. The religion just exists so that, you know, Rome can exist. And Martin Luther was like, well, that's wrong, and I'm just gonna show you what's right. And that's then later how all these other denominations happen, basically. The thing about
The schism, right?
yeah, but
Yeah.
the problem with that is that now it's like you know, Protestantism um takes the Bible too literally, you know, and then
Hmm.
from there you have like Calvinism and all that stuff.
Sure.
And the Catholic Church is just a Roman psyop, right? Like Christianity in itself is just a Roman psyop for Rome to stay alive. So they went from empire to church because that was more sustainable, you know.
Yeah.
And they
This is essentially the Great Schism, what you're talking about,
right.
right? Like where everything just got divided, where Christianity rose, Catholicism rose, and then it all just got like divided into all these fucking different sects.
Right. And then these, you know, and all these different sects they happened because, you know, the kings of England they didn't want to pay taxes.
No, the reason why the sex happens is because the priests are fucking celibate, so they have to have sex somewhere, right?
Oh, I guess. That makes sense. That's why they're diddling little boys, you know, because
Exactly. Yeah, 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 yeah.
it's
That's what the
that's
Great Schism is.
right. So so yeah, so Protestantism became a thing because the kings of England they just didn't want to pay taxes to the church, you know. And then later you had like all these different churches and all these different priests, and they were like, well, I can just make my own church with my own doctrine, and who's gonna stop me,
Right.
you know.
And now that's what we have in the West is where the churches and the spiritual leaders don't have to pay taxes, right?
Yeah, so again, like it like Christianity just then turns like, and when I say Christianity, Catholicism included, you know, it becomes this just Roman psyop that got out of hand, you know, because they asked for too much money,
Sure.
basically,
Yeah.
right?
It's
And
fucking it's wild, dude. It's such a wild thing.
so it becomes a pseudo religion, becomes a pseudo religion, and becomes a pseudo religion to conquer people like to conquer Northern Europeans
Right.
and Eastern Europeans. That's the whole reason it exists.
And then the
You know,
Nazis, on the other hand, took all of this information and decided to create like an Aryan race as well, right? Because Hitler was a Catholic, I believe, right?
he just wanted to go back to a Prussia, like to a Prussia, because that's where Germany thrived the most. But realistically, the reason why Hitler exists in the first place was because the English crown and the US sponsored the Nazis to sort of like create a European Union
Right.
that can fight Russia. Because the English crown first sponsored the Bolsheviks to do a Russian revolution and hand it over to the English to overthrow the Tsar. But the Bolsheviks were like, well, no, go fuck yourself, because Russia is mine now.
Right.
And then they sponsored the Nazis to be like, oh, go fight the Russians so we can take over.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And
And that
now the Fourth Reich is rising.
it's yeah,
It's debatable, but
this
I've had many conversations with people and saying that we're in the Fourth Reich right now, where it's the downfall of the West, and now they want to fucking fight Russia.
The downfall, they want to fight Russia because Russia has a lot of land and a lot of
Sure,
resources,
it's fucking
and
huge, dude.
right, and they can use that land and those resources to capitalize more.
Why do we humans want fucking world domination? Like,
It's
why, dude? Like, can we not just fucking rest on our laurels and be peaceful with one another? Does this have to be like this spiritual fucking warfare all the time? Is that what
it's
we're in? Is that what we're in? And like, which fucking side do we choose?
so you know uh
I
so
have so many
it's
questions.
it's and I'm going to try and answer some of them. But the reason why the elites, they want all this land, they want world domination, because they believe in a limitless expansion. So they believe that there is no limits to expansion, and I can just take as much as I want without any consequences.
Does this delve into flat Earth too, where there's like we're living on a flat plane and like beyond the ice wall is more and more and more and more territory?
I'm
Like,
not. I don't know. I don't know
okay, okay.
if I'm
You
not
don't
an
have to
expert
go
on
that
flat Earth,
direction. I just wanted to ask you that.
but
Sorry.
I'm not an expert on flat Earth.
Okay.
But but there's a limitless expansion that they believe in. They believe that they can just take however much they want, and there's no consequences to it. Which makes no sense because physical reality has like the fact that you have certain shapes that are rigid. You can't like you can't take iron or steel if there's no more iron ore. There's no more,
Sure,
you know,
sure.
like there's a physical limit
Yeah.
to to our resources, right?
Video games show us that too.
Sure,
Like when you're
but
playing like RPGs or like civilization games, there's limited resources, but one of the resources that I don't think we're limited of is oil. I think it's the black blood of the earth. I think it's limitless.
it's sure, and it is. That's why it's so attractive. Because you can just add infinitum, just take it. But what's
Yeah,
more attractive is you can also just print money. You
Babylonian
know,
money magic. Yeah,
yeah. So, um, so they believe in a limitless expansion, but what happens is and so that's why they want to take as much land as possible, just to get all the resources and hoard them, right? And that hoarding causes these weird behaviors, because they're like a dragon, where they say like, oh, it's all mine, it just belongs to me and nobody else.
right,
you
right.
know um and what happens in order to achieve that, they have to convince you that that behavior is normal, right? And so they install these, like literally install like a program into your brain, into your thoughts, what's acceptable and what's not, through
And that
like,
you yourself have to hoard
right,
certain
that
materials, right?
right
Like
so
they get you locked into this material gain
right
mentality.
right
Yeah.
where if you don't have anything, like if you don't have money, you're not you can't be happy, right? And that's why women are so susceptible to the system. It's because they can only see themselves. Their psychological structure only allows them to see themselves through the eyes of the other. Which again, like this book talks, everything that I say, like this book explains it all in detail. But the gist is that women don't exist because for them they only see themselves through your eyes. So how you perceive them, that's how they identify. They don't really have like that self-identification, right?
Well,
uh
that's another thing the Bible talks about when Jesus talks about how it's better to cut your eye out rather than lust over women, right?
I mean, sure, but
I
but
never do that, but I'd rather lust over women and cut my eye
yeah,
out,
that
honestly.
cut the eye off. That's better. But so women don't have like their own agency. They only see themselves through the eyes of the other, through the eyes of society. And so when the elitists install certain ideological beliefs, women are more susceptible to it. And that's why women are also such an attractive market, you know, because it's so easy to convince them to need something. And what you'll see is in most middle class families, actually most families, who is the one who tries to keep equilibrium, and who is the one who like is the convinces people of like whatever the state wants. It's mostly the mother, the suburban mom, right? In the suburbs, it's the suburban mom. Working class is the housewife, you know. Um, like they're the ones who install these ideological beliefs into the family.
Sure.
Yeah, because they're so susceptible to it. And that's why you have people who believe that like whatever whatever is socially acceptable is actually just a ideological position of justifying elitists behaving in this manner that they do, which is to say, like, hoard as much as possible, steal as much as possible, and do a bunch of degenerate stuff to cut yourself off from God. Because that's
Right.
what they do, right?
Yeah.
That's what they do. And if they can convince you that that's normal, then you start accepting those behaviors. You
Sure.
don't see anything wrong with them, you know.
Which is why we had the whole LGBTQ thing like being pushed onto us. And
Right.
then the one thing that a lot of people were talking about was like, what's next? Pedophilia, you know? But I think the pendulum is swaying back to the right now, where we can say, okay, I think we're gonna pump the brakes on this shit now, you
But
know?
they're
So I
but
think
the,
it's gonna swing to the right, but then it's gonna swing back to the left again, right?
it's
So
both
then, yeah,
it's both the same. It's both the same because what
you gotta
happens,
choose your fucking middle ground to combat it all.
well, they're both the same because you now have gay conservatives, something that wasn't a
Right.
thing,
Yeah, yeah,
something
yeah,
that
yeah.
wasn't a thing like 50 years ago,
Yeah, yeah, that's
you know?
wild, dude.
And so the thing about the thing about the right and right versus left is completely stupid because the right is just like it's like a video game, but you just refuse to update the video game because you
Right.
don't like the current update. It's still the game.
Yeah.
It's still the same game, and at some point it's gonna update because the
Yeah, but
next generation.
you can still update the game and still play it. You can still update the game and still play it, but you still got to be the hero in the game, right?
But the thing is like you're not the hero. You're not the hero. So for them it's like, oh, I don't like how this is currently, but I liked it how it was 50 years ago. But
Right.
that is the natural progress of your ideology. Like it's gonna go there. That's like the conclusion of it, you know. And you could
Yeah.
say that you don't like it or not, but you're gonna have children at some point, and then they're gonna take it a step further, you know,
Yeah.
to a point where like now we have like transgender conservatives and gay conservatives,
Yeah.
which
Dude,
is
I'm friends with transgenders and they are like more fucking anti woke than I am. It's crazy.
so
I
that's my
love
point.
it.
So that's my point. Like, and that happens because people don't educate themselves enough, you know.
Right.
And this book talks about that a lot. How it's also very political. How they ideologically interpolate you into that position of well, you choose whatever right or left, but they're still going to achieve what they want one way
Sure.
or another, which is
Yeah.
to say they'll just steal from you as much as possible. They steal your time, they steal your labor, they steal your future,
Hmm.
and then they convince you that it's normal,
Right.
you know.
I think this is a great way to summarize Pillars of Wisdom.
Yeah. So
Um,
a great way to summarize Buddhist wisdom is to say like
this whole episode that we did, it
right.
was, you
It's
know,
it's it's again like everything that we talked about. It's in the book. Yeah, it's all in the book, and the only solution for people is to
the
just
the
pack
craziest thing. Yeah, the
to do the
craziest
most
thing is that I
radical
haven't
thing.
even read it, but I
I'll send
know,
it to you.
you know,
Yeah, I'll send it to
sweet
you.
dude, sweet.
We started
Um,
production. Because we've been banned from Lulu, who was our previous. That's how radical this book is. We've been banned from Lulu because it was too radical, and so now we have to produce in Greece. We started printing in Greece because Greeks don't speak English, and so they don't
yeah, right, right.
understand what's in the book. So we paid
This is a
Greeks.
great project you're on, man. Should feel blessed. I don't like the word blessed anymore because I feel like the word magic says be less. You know, that's
Yeah,
one thing you look into, right? Like another
yeah,
thing to look into,
you
that's
can
more wisdom. Is like the more wisdom I gain, it's like I feel like I can't even speak English anymore.
right. You gotta use the Hebrew word for blessed to to really get the meaning out, or the ancient Greek one, uh, or whatever it is
Yeah, for
that.
sure. Honestly, dude, I feel like I could talk to you for fucking hours on end. But
Yeah, I mean,
I think we'll wrap it up here.
let's wrap it
I,
up
w-
here. Yeah.
I want to let you get the book out there. Where can people find the book?
So it's on thepalaceofwisdom.com. Um,
That's easy.
thepalaceofwisdom.com, and then you get on our webpage, you press get book, and you'll be put to our Shopify. I'll send you a link so you can just sort of like put in your description. Um, but it's thepalaceofwisdom.com, and you'll be sent to our website. You click get book, and then it'll be shipped to you from Greece, because that's what we have to do in order to get the book to you, just so they can't
Awesome.
take it away from you. Because once this book is in your hands, they can't censor it. They
That's
can't take
cool.
it away.
Yeah. It
It's in
looks
your hands.
beautiful too. Like
We
it's
changed the
stunning.
cover. We changed the cover. Actually, it looks way better now.
Is it embossed?
Yeah, it's not embossed, but this
Oh,
is
it's
the
not embossed, but it looks fucking, dude. It looks like I'm playing Zelda and I find the Book of Wisdom in the video game. It's
that's
fucking
what it
beautiful.
is. That's what it is.
I
It has a bunch of cheat codes in there. So again, like this book has
have
a
to
bunch.
get it. Yeah.
It has stuff on. It has very practical stuff too, like how to get a remote job, how to get residency in a different country, how to avoid paying taxes. Uh,
All the shit that
um,
everybody's talking about these days.
right. It has everything in it. It has all these strategies in there for you to sort of like apply them. So it's also heavy theoretical. It's very theoretical, but it's written in such a way that you don't have to be like a PhD major to get it. Like it's
Right, right.
for the average Joe,
Yeah,
right?
that's good because like a lot of people who delve into these spiritual topics, these philosophical things, they think that there's no escape. And I think this book will probably give them a little bit more of uh, you know,
There is,
a
see,
base of
right.
operations.
That's the message of the book, is that it's there is an escape, there is hope. You just gotta take it. You
Sure.
gotta go. You gotta go for it. You gotta seize that opportunity. And that book tells you how to do that and where to look, how to do it. You know, and I think I think this generation, like millennials, Gen Z, even boomers, can benefit a lot from this.
If
Um,
they would just open their mind a little bit.
just read, just get the book and read it. It's
Yeah.
it's written pretty, in a very easy way for you to understand, because the author, he had to basically, he wrote on Reddit mostly, and the thing about Reddit is like you're competing against pornography. So
Okay.
how can he cap capture your attention that you stop watching
Interesting.
porn to
Yeah, yeah,
read
yeah.
the article,
I don't know Reddit a lot, but
Yeah,
yeah.
but that's the internet in general, like 80% of
Oh
the
yeah,
internet is
internet is
porn.
like, look, here's porn. It's at your
Right.
fingertips, right?
Yeah, there's
Whereas
there's
old guys like me, I'm 40, I'll be 46 in May, and it's like, dude, I used to fucking steal magazines from the
right.
fucking convenience
But
store, right?
now you're one click away. So now
Yeah.
you're one click away. And so that's why he's like, okay, how do I write so that people, you know, put away their porn to read my book,
Right, right, right.
And so that's
That's
that.
and that's a very combative strategy too, because people love their porn.
Yeah, that's why they
What do
love
you
this
want to
book
make your
more.
porn? Do you want to make like for me now, my porn is knowledge.
Right. So, so knowledge has to be transmitted to you in a way that's like that it's understandable. But if your brain is fried on like watching titties jiggle up and down all day,
Which is not a
um,
bad thing.
it's not a
But you
bad,
got to get some knowledge in there in your diet
yeah,
too, right?
you gotta, right. And so how do you get that? It's you have to write in a way that resembles that motion, you know. So so pillarsofwisdom.com, the book. So you write it right here.
That's an easy thing. I will put the
Easy
link in
thing.
the show notes.
And
Uh, yeah, dude. If anybody, if are you available to speak to anybody who you want to go on their show or you want them on your show? Do you have a contact for yourself personally?
right. So if you know somebody so people who get the book, we usually contact them after a week after they get the book. So and there's also a little QR code where they can speak to me directly.
Nice.
And I mean, if you know anyone who would like to do a podcast with me, who would like to have me as a guest, I'm pretty available.
Dude, I have tons of contacts, man. Trust me.
That's perfect.
I'll get you out there.
That's perfect.
I
Yeah.
love it, man. Jack me off, my good buddy. His name is so fucking hilarious. He's got a great show. Shout out Jack me off from
Network
what's his
failure.
network failure. Yeah,
Yeah, I
sorry,
was
Jack.
on there.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But he introduced me to you, and I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. He's like, I hope you don't mind me giving you his contact. And I'm like, no, no, cool, man. So yeah, it was cool. We had a couple cancellations, but we got it going, and it was fantastic. You're a beautiful human being, and
Thank you
I
so much.
really hope this book gets out there because this is phenomenal work, man. And I don't even fucking I haven't even read it yet, but I can tell it's phenomenal.
Yeah, and our production has already started. So we're gonna send you a book. And
Sweet.
we can do a second episode after you read it.
Yeah, for
You
sure,
know?
dude. For sure. For sure. I love that.
And you can talk about some more specific stuff that you're interested in
Yeah, for
from the
sure,
book.
man.
So yeah, just oh yeah, by the way, the pricing on the website is going to change, because before we were shipping with Lulu, so it says $40 now, but it's actually less. Book is going
Good,
to
good.
cost less. It's going to be like something like 30 or 25, something like that. um so don't be scared from the price. That's not what you're actually paying. You're paying actually less. We just have to
Yeah,
update it.
yeah.
Um
There's a lot of people out there though doing this kind of work right now with books. Like you see on Instagram, people are like, they got the books out, and then they got the tagline like, "Why is Jesus not the savior?" and blah 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 blah, and all this fucking cool wisdom, right? It's like
Sure.
this is what's awakening people that want to be awakened. So I
Yeah,
commend
this
you. I commend the book, even though I haven't read it yet. But thank you so much for coming on, dude.
yeah, thank you for having me.
And
It was a great conversation. You're a great host. I felt
thank
very
you.
welcomed,
Yeah, dude.
it's very warm.
It's all good, man. We're all human. We all love each other, right?
Right. Yeah, of course.
Okay, thank you so much, Vito, and
Right.
we'll connect very soon. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Thanks so much.
Awesome.
Bye.
Peace, bro.